Good morning. It is Monday, October 17th. I'm Jessica Lovell. Welcome into the Morning Medical Update. This week, we dedicate our time to the power of a second opinion. And this guy is proof of that. What started as strange, lingering flu-like symptoms sent Kyle Warren in search of answers. He finally found them and eventually found a new heart. And researchers say genetic sequencing could contain future COVID-19 variants. We'll talk more about that. Thank you so much for joining us here on Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitter today. A second opinion, a second chance at life. Today, we have the story of 54-year-old Kyle Warren, who underwent heart transplant surgery 5 years ago. But it all started with that second look. Make sure you get your questions sent in to us through the links there on your screen. As always, you can place them in the chat thread below. We'll get to those in just a bit. Kyle, though, joins us virtually this morning, along with here in studio with me, cardiologist Dr. Bana Gupta and heart transplant coordinator Sarah Anderson. Welcome to both of you. Kyle, welcome to you. And also, we want to welcome in Marie Mushi. She is the mother of Kyle's heart donor, Tom. So glad you are all with us today. Kyle, I do want to start with you because after several years of heart failure, from what you thought was like a flu that turned into an infection in your heart, it led to heart failure. You now have a new heart. How do you feel today?
I feel wonderful today. There's really nothing I can't do. I walk, I exercise, I work out in the yard. The doctors just told me to, do whatever I feel like doing and live life. So I feel great now.
So what were you diagnosed with that led to your new heart? Tell us about that.
Well, originally in January of 14 is when I was diagnosed with the heart failure after I had pneumonia and bronchitis for several months before that. It just lingered on and would never go away. So they finally sent me to a cardiologist, and that's when, after some tests, they determined I had heart failure.
Marie, good morning to you. Your son, Tom, gave the ultimate gift through his untimely death. How has knowing Kyle through all of this helped with your healing?
Well, since Tom's death was a sudden death, it was the only light at the end of the tunnel that gave me comfort in knowing that he saved 8 people's lives, and it was an honor to be able to meet Kyle.
And we sat down the other day, and you both hadn't seen each other in a few years. Is that right?
Correct.
How is it to reconnect for both of you?
Great.
It's wonderful. Good. Yes. Too many things going on in life, and COVID and everything kept us away, but we're hoping to stay closer together from now on.
Well, we know that this story, beautiful in some ways and so heartbreaking in others, but it was made possible by this second opinion that you received years ago. Tell us a little bit, I guess, about, Kyle, how you went about looking for that second opinion. You knew something wasn't quite right, you and your wife, right?
Yes. I was in the hospital there in January 14, and after fainting, I was taking my ambulance after fainting, and my heart rate got up to 270s. They put in a pacemaker defibrillator, and they told me they'd see me in 6 or 8 months, and I just didn't feel like I was at that point yet, and just wanted to get a second opinion. We both said we want to get a second opinion, so we went back to my doctor, and we had heard a lot of good things about the University of Kansas Health System, and we told them that that's where we'd like to see our second opinion.
And you knew that the possibility of needing a heart transplant was out there, but when they actually told you that, what was that conversation like?
It was very hard. I can remember the day, like it was yesterday. We were sitting in the room, and they told us that, and Jill and I, neither one couldn't even say anything. We were both in tears. We couldn't say anything, but a lot of things go through your mind when you hear that. They told me that I may only have a few months to live unless I received a heart, and there were just, there were a lot of things I wanted to do yet, and it was very hard.
And they told you that you may have to wait several months for the heart, correct? And you only waited 10 days?
Yeah, they told me, especially when I went in for the evaluation in October, they said it could be, 2-3 months waiting in the hospital for the heart. I know the several of the recipients around me waited that long in the hospital, but ultimately I only waited in there for 10 days.
Kyle, you said that your goal was to walk your daughter down the aisle. I bet that was the best walk of your life. Tell us about that.
Yes, it was. I got that opportunity just this past August. Like I said, when they told me that I had only a few months to live without, unless I got a heart, there's just so many things that go through your mind, and it wasn't that I was feeling sorry for myself or anything. I was just wanting to be there for them for those moments. And I know, it's every girl's dream is for their dad to walk them down the aisle. And so that was definitely the best walk I've ever had.
So glad you got to do that. And both of you have honored each other and honored Tom in such a really meaningful way. And I want to talk about that in just a moment, but I want to bring in Dr. Bana Gupta. Again, we mentioned how this amazing story, and Sarah as well, because you're part of this whole big team, that this was made possible by a second opinion. How important, though, is it to seek that and ask questions? Dr. Gupta.
So, when it comes to heart failure, second opinions are really of utmost importance because in heart failure is as worse a diagnosis, especially the end stage, is like having a terminal cancer. And having a second opinion at institutions like University of Kansas Health System is very important. And there are many reasons. Number one reason is we provide a comprehensive and very integrative service line with the great team members. I think the biggest advantage of having a second opinion at our institution is having a great team which can provide a very comprehensive, time critical and sensitive way to get to a diagnosis. Second opinion does not mean that you want to seek alternative diagnosis. It's to enhance your care through a team effort and with a very integrative and comprehensive approach, especially when it comes to heart failure, because sometimes it is misdiagnosed and it is a manifestation of multiple disease process happening at the same time.
And Dr. Gupta, though, we talk about how sometimes we are the second opinion and we send people for second opinions, but as a patient, it seems like that might not be always the easiest thing to ask. We always think of our physician as being the smartest person in the room, and we trust what people are telling us. But tell us how we navigate seeking that second opinion and having that conversation with your current physician.
So our referral, when they send patient or the patient seek second opinion, we review carefully all their documents with their previous diagnosis. We request all the images from their center, which has our centers, what diagnostic workup they have done, and then based on that we have comprehensive discussion in the clinic with the team members about their heart failure, and then subsequently we order very diligently and very carefully the further testing, and as a process of it we bring the patient back and then provide them all comprehensive view of what's happening with their heart.
So are second opinions created equally, as far as is a heart second opinion different than maybe a cancer second opinion, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, heart failure diagnosis is often patients do feel that they are doing all right, but they are internally their heart is rapidly deteriorating, and it's a very time sensitive. Cancer is a very perception of having a cancer diagnosis is usually patient understands and grasp it very clearly that they have got a very kind of a very serious and grave disease or diagnosis, not all the time, but heart failure, most often they feel all right, they look all right, but they don't have much time left. Sometimes from the diagnosis of heart failure and end-stage heart failure, they may have only 1 year. There's only 50% chance they may survive only a year.
So you're saying that when somebody's in heart failure, they may not physically feel it as much?
They may feel it, but they slow down, they adjust their life based on their symptoms and how they experience. And that eventually actually sometimes delays the diagnosis because, at the end of the day, you look all right, you feel all right, and, you just slow down. And people think that they are aging. That's most often we hear.
Kyle, you experienced this. Did you look all right, feel all right? What was your experience like?
Yeah, I did. a lot of my friends didn't know I was even sick, except for my closer friends. They knew what I was going through, but I looked fine. I felt fine, except for when I tried to walk, short distances and stuff like that. I get out of breath, but other than that, I felt fine.
Sarah, as a heart transplant coordinator, you are a part of these stories. You sit back and look at them and you watch them develop and turn into what we're seeing here today. Tell us a little bit about the role, though, you play.
Right. So I work with our patients after they have their heart transplant. So we coordinate a lot of the surveillance after you get a transplant. There's a lot of stuff we have to keep an eye out for if they're in rejection or infections creeping up. So we are in charge of scheduling a lot of that testing, monitoring a lot of labs. We work with our entire team. Our team consists of psychiatry, infectious disease, social work, case management, pharmacy. We work with a ton of people. And so kind of our role is the point person between the physicians and the rest of that team. We get to know these patients really well. I actually had the pleasure to see Kyle's transplant all the way through. I had just kind of started with the program at that point. So this is cool. And I hadn't seen those pictures of him walking his daughter down the aisle. So that kind of brings it full circle for us.
Because I would imagine you have these conversations. You talk about their personal life and some of their goals, like being at a wedding and walking their child down the aisle.
Yeah, and we just spend a lot of time doing some education. We do a lot of education with our patients. That's a big part of our job. What to expect after transplant, ultimately our goal is to prolong the organ as much as possible. So Kyle gets as much time as he can with that organ, but we also want to honor the donor. So I think this is a great example. We work really hard for our patients, but also we want to honor those that have given the gift that they gave. And we all appreciate that and understand that on our team as well. That's not overlooked.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so we honor Tom today,
Yeah.
Marie. His name and his face is really what this is all about today. And you said that being able to donate Tom's organs was so comforting to you. Tell us a little bit about that for you and your healing process.
Well, again, since it was such a sudden death, one day we're all together and then the next day he's gone. And he always he had a big heart and he always lighted up the room. And knowing that he is living, his organs are living on and has helped, brings me great comfort, because that's the only positive to the end, I guess you could say.
Kyle, you talked about that. You were open about that feeling that you feel a great responsibility to live your life to the fullest and help Tom live his life to the fullest.
Yeah, I do. I think it's good to keep in shape. I want to keep in shape to honor him, and not only him, but the doctors and everyone that saved my life, the nurses that saved my life. I want to take as good a care as that gift as I can.
And you've talked about that, Dr. Gupta, that's really important when we talk about any sort of transplant, is making sure that that the recipient is a good steward of the organ.
That is correct. And this is, I think, one of the biggest responsibility as healthcare providers and physicians and team is to make sure that the donor's heart is taken care of in the most meticulous, full of life and joy, what a person would have experienced if that person was not a donor. So we really work hard in that aspect. And I would highlight Sarah's role as not only Sarah takes care of the patients after the transplant, but Sarah and her similar coordinators play important role in once they receive the call from the donor and about the donor heart, that logistics of getting it right in a very critical manner in first 12 hours is very, very important role they play. And that's where we heavily rely on our transplant coordinators and the team, that they take care of almost a lifetime commitment they have to take care of the donor's heart for 25 to 30 or 40 years or so.
Sarah, talking about organ donation with family, your family members, isn't always an easy conversation to have, but it's so necessary. How do you start that conversation and make sure that as a person, your family understands your wishes?
Right. I think the most important thing is that you actually just have the conversation. I think a lot of people assume that people know what our wishes are, and I work in this role, I would assume my family knows what I would like to do, but I still have had that conversation with my family. I'm a pretty upfront, blunt person, so I'm just somebody that's going to say, hey, this is, yeah, thanks, Kyle. But I'm somebody that's just going to say, this is what I want, and this is how, and I am grateful to have a family that would honor that. But I do think it's hard. I think there's a lot of questions around donor, being a donor and signing up to be a donor. I think stories like this, I think us being able to get this out on, media of some sort, if you are uncomfortable having the conversation, show stories like this. There's tons on the internet as well, so that people can just see the ultimate benefit. I think the moment when they're dealing with such a hard decision, if you have that conversation already, you've made a decision for your family that they don't have to make.
Death is a reality, and it's not something we want to face when we're alive, but it really makes the big difference when you're in Kyle's position and also when you're in Marie's position.
Yeah, absolutely.
That conversation has been had, and she can feel really good about the decisions she's making in those initial really rough moments. We've talked about honoring Tom today, and Kyle, I want to talk about something pretty cool that you did, and I want to tell us a little bit about that tattoo. And Marie, I'm going to start with you. You tell me about this tattoo, because this is Kyle's arm.
Yes. Tom was scheduled to get a tattoo on the Wednesday, which ironically, he collapsed on a Monday, and ironically, Wednesday is when they declared him, brain dead and officially dead. So we tried to honor his wish of that tattoo, and on his gravesite, we got a vase, and we had that tattoo put on the vase. So we kind of honored him in that way and gave him his wish. But Kyle took it to the next level.
Oh, he sure did. This guy who says he's not a tattoo guy became a tattoo guy. Tell us about how that all came to be, Kyle.
Yeah, I was never against people that had tattoos. I have family and friends that had tattoos. I just never had one, never thought I would have one, never had a reason to have one until we met them and heard that story. And on the way home, Jill and I were talking, and I said, I think I want to get that tattoo. So we scheduled it and got it as soon as we could.
And now I've always said you have this internal reminder of Tom, but now I would imagine people ask you about your tattoo and it gives you a chance to talk about Tom even more, right?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So I know you gave Marie a really special gift, and I want to share that in just a moment. I want to take a break and check in with Dr. Dana Hawkinson, Medical Director of Infection Prevention Control, real quick. I want to get our COVID count and get to a couple of headlines this morning before we get to that. Good morning to you. Happy Monday.
Yeah, hi. Happy Monday.
Hi.
A little chilly out.
I know, right?
But right now, the active cases at the health system are pretty good. Under 20. Again, we have 17 active infections, none in the ICU or on the ventilator, and 17 that recovery period. So hopefully we are getting to that trend that we had been looking for the past few weeks, and that is those lower active infections in the hospital.
Okay, evidence now suggesting the pandemic came from nature and not a lab. Tell us about that.
This is just further evidence that it did not come from a lab. It was a natural event. Again, earlier in the year, there were two peer-reviewed studies that were published that really focused in on that fact and those details. And certainly all of the overwhelming information and data support the fact that these were spillover events that led to the pandemic. This was not a laboratory leak or anything like that. So, these data are becoming peer-reviewed. They're out there, and I think hopefully this is one more conspiracy theory that can be put to rest. But again, investigations are still ongoing, but the vast majority of that quality peer-reviewed evidence continues to support the fact that the pandemic was started with these spillover events, more than likely in that market area. That is certainly, they found a lot of sequences there when they were doing those samplings of that area. So continue to watch, but that is the best information that we have about the beginning of the pandemic. And hopefully, like I said, some of these conspiracy theories will be put to rest.
A study from the University of Georgia found genetic sequencing could contain future COVID-19 variants. What's that about?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just important because we know we have the technology. The technology is continuing to improve. The technology we're talking about here is very quick sequencing of these genetic sequences of the variants of the viruses that are isolated. It is very important. You know, we still need to do the experiments and understand exactly what some of these other genes within the virus do to help, for instance, to help its replication, to decrease our immune response. But as we get more of that information on the laboratory side, we can certainly use that, and when we're able to do these very quick sequencing, and we do need more. The technology is there. We need more places in the United States to be able to do that and quickly get that data out or to the CDC, whoever that might be, to be evaluating for those things. But also around the world, we know South Africa has really led the efforts in that, as well as, say, the UK, in those genetic sequences to be looking for new variants that may come about. But also, once we do have those sequences, understanding what some of those other genes, other than spike, do for that virus to help it maybe have a reproduction advantage, or determine if it may cause more severe disease or less severe disease as well.
Dr. Hawkinson, thank you so much. Let's see if we have any reporter questions on the line. All right, Marie, before we get to community questions, Marie, I wanted to ask you about the gift that Kyle gave you. Do you have that with you?
Yes, I do.
Tell us about that. I want to see and I want to hear it.
Okay, so the first time that we met Kyle, he gave us, my two granddaughters and me, this wonderful gift, and it is a bear, and it has the emblem of donation, the ribbon, and it is Tom's heartbeat. So I can listen to it, or his daughters can listen to it anytime we really miss him, and it is so comforting. It's the best gift ever.
So I think when we spoke last week, you said that it didn't have any batteries because you had worn the batteries out on it, and I'm not surprised by that. And did you replace the batteries?
Yes, I did, and it's good to go.
It's good to go. Making a beautiful sound. I don't know if we could hear it, but Kyle, tell us, can we hear that? I don't know if we could hear that, but to know that that you could hear it makes me really, really happy. Kyle, why was it so important to give that to her? And what was that experience like for you?
Well, of course, nothing can compare to the gift they gave me, but when Jill and I found out that we were going to be meeting the family, we wanted to give them something. We didn't know what, and ultimately it was Jill that had heard of this, and like I said, it was just important that we do something for them. So we got the bears, and we went to my family physician's office, and they recorded it and put it in the bears.
It's just really, really a beautiful gift. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for showing us the tattoo and the bear. I do want to ask a couple of questions from our community. Judy wants to know, does insurance pay for a second opinion? Dr. Gupta.
Yeah, I think majority of the time it does cover the second opinion. It can be a referral from the provider or the healthcare provider or physician, or it can be a second opinion from the patient can seek second opinion. We at University of Kansas Health System, we have got amazing team which goes through if some of the financial and insurance aspect of it. So we expedite or sometimes make it easier for the patients.
Juan wants to know, is there any connection between changes in climate change and heart failure?
Don't think so. I mean, sometimes when a high mountain situation that people live in, they may experience more symptoms, but I don't think there is any data about weather changes.
Lorraine has a really, really important question. How much coffee is too much coffee for the heart? Now, that could apply to all of us. Please tell me that no amount is too much, but I don't think that's what you're going to tell me.
I think there's data about caffeine and heart and arrhythmias, but I don't think that has direct correlation with heart failure. Yes, there is some data of excessive coffee drinking causes arrhythmia.
Okay. It's an important question on a Monday morning because we all need our coffee. Jim wants to know, And Sarah, you can answer this for us. Is there anything that might keep someone from donating their organs after death? I mean, maybe besides age and any, terminal
I mean, I
illnesses?
wouldn't even deter age as something to keep you from being a donor. I think there's other things that, there's things that can still be donated depending on age. But that being said, I think a lot of religious beliefs cause people to hesitate becoming a donor. So it's voodoo to some people too. So I think it is something that we hope the more stories like this that get out and the more people we transplant, that story just kind of interweaves itself into the community a little bit more. And so people see, oh my gosh, it does work and good things come out of it.
Right.
And this weird, and we hear both sides of the story. So the donor family shares their story and it's a great closure for them. And then you see the end results. And so I think that helps. I think it's hard if you've never experienced. I also think people would be really surprised how many people they know in the community that have received a transplant and they just don't know.
Well, and Kyle, you were one of those. I know. Tell us about the story about your friend who sadly lost his son.
Yeah, so one of my best friends and his wife, they had a son that was 26 years old, and he tragically died. And when I went to the hospital to visit them while I was in the hospital, waiting to donate his organs, he came up to me and told me that I was the reason he decided to be a donor. Said that he was with him in a truck one time and just looked to him and said, it's an awesome thing that happened to Kyle, and I think I want to do that.
And so again, it goes back to that gift that Tom gave to Kyle, and then the gift that your friend's son gave to someone else. And these are the really impactful stories. When you hear stuff like that, Sarah, I bet that's exactly what you're talking about. It spreads in the community, the good that's happening.
I think so, and I think something to commend Kyle about too is that he has gotten really involved in the community and his, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've gone to some assemblies of high schools and talked about your experience just so high school kids can learn what it means to be a donor and see the end result of, God forbid, anything to that magnitude would happen, but if it does, it can really go to some good and help somebody else out quite a bit. So I think we have a great group of transplant recipients that work with us and have become quite a bit of a family, and it's fun to watch. But they're all out in the community doing stuff. We have a patient that's even on the national level of Woman Heart. So they're just really taking their gifts and maximizing them as much as they can.
Michael has a personal question for you, Marie, if you don't mind answering it. But did you initially feel close to your son when you first met Kyle? What is that feeling like? Did it take a moment? Did it take hearing his heart? What was that like?
Well, I was super excited to meet him, so I could hear the heart. And once I heard it, it was absolutely amazing and brought so much peace. And then getting the bear to be a reminder and to just hear it, it just puts a smile on my face.
I love hearing that story. I love that you wore the battery out. I think that probably makes Kyle feel pretty good to know that his gift is getting its use for sure. I just love this story. It just makes me feel happy. And I know hopefully those listening, it's inspired people to donate their organs. How important is that, though, to make sure that people are doing that? Again, can't drive that home enough about having those conversations. We're about ready to hit the holidays.
Yeah.
Good time to bring up that uncomfortable conversation around the dinner table.
Add it to politics or religion,
Right.
whatever you want.
This is a good switch from that, right?
Yeah.
I want to get to some final thoughts from our guests, and our community has a few COVID questions that I want to get to, and I promise I will get to those tomorrow. So hang tight with me. We'll get with that and Dr. Hawkinson tomorrow. But I want to get some final thoughts. And Kyle, I'm going to start with you. What do you want us to know?
Yeah, I would just say that when you're dealing with something, a serious health issue like heart failure, it's always good to get a second opinion. Whether you're comfortable with the doctor you're seeing or not, it still is a good idea to get a second opinion. And I'm glad it's definitely the best decision I made to go to the University of Kansas Health System. Like they and Tom, of course, they and Tom saved my life, and I just want to thank Marie for welcoming us into her family and telling us the story of Tom and sharing what his life was like. And I want to thank Dr. Gupta and Sarah and all the rest of the staff there at University of Kansas Health System.
Kyle, thank you so much for being with us and for being such a great advocate out in the community and being part of the health system family. We appreciate that so much. Marie, I want to share some pictures of Tom, if we can, while you're giving us your final thoughts, and just tell us what you want us to know, or just tell us about your son.
Well, just that, having him be a donor, of course, we had talked about it early on because unfortunately we have lost people tragically. And we talked about how it, you're pretty much gone. Why not help someone else? So when it was on his license and they knew he was a donor, but they still wanted the family to be all on board. And of course we were, but knowing when we got that letter that he helped save 8 people's lives just brought so much peace. And then being able to meet Kyle and see what he's been able to continue and do, it just feels so good.
Marie, thank you for being with us today and sharing Tom with us and his story, and just be well and stay close to us. Thank you, okay?
Thank you.
Sarah, before I get your final thoughts, I had a quick question. Alice wants to know, does cancer stage or type make a difference in your ability to donate an organ?
Ooh, that might be actually better for Dr. Gupta. I'm gonna defer that to Dr. Gupta.
Yeah, there are specific cancers we restricts further organ donation, especially the heart. We won't go into details of it, but yes, even if there is some diagnosis of specific cancer, you can be eligible. Very few cancers are restrictive for that, for being organ donor.
And this is a really important question. Catherine wants to know, is having the donor indication on your driver's license enough to have those wishes carried out? Is there any other further steps that have to happen? Or once you put that on your driver's license, is that your wishes being carried out after death?
So there is every death in the hospital is there is a team which evaluates, and every hospital is required to ask this question to the family members of the person who has complications or death in the hospital, to be about their wishes to be donor. But having that written on the driving license actually helps the family members make that decision easier if they did not know the donor's wishes prior.
So it starts with that.
Yeah. Right.
That is such an
You can
important step.
also, a huge connection was the health app on the Apple Health app. You can now register to be a donor through that. That was a huge collaboration. So you can go, everybody that has an Apple iPhone has the My Health or iHealth, whatever. Scroll to the bottom and it says you can become a donor or register to become a donor. So you can do it that way as well.
Oh, that's a great tip. Great
License is probably the easiest because that's the first place people are going to look.
But to have it 2 places is good.
But 2 places is good. Yeah.
Final thoughts from you, Sarah?
I think my final thoughts is just kind of seeing this, and I've been with the program for a really long time, but I have probably 10 to 20 other people that have gotten second opinions, if not even more, at KU, and we have transplanted. But I have, we've done almost 180 transplants since we restarted our program. We follow a little over 200 transplant patients, and I would say all 200 of those patients have a story like this. They're doing things that they weren't able to do before, and hopefully that's brought closure to some donor families. But we get to hear those cool stories, and that makes our job fun, is that we get to hear what people are doing because they're still doing well because they've gotten a new heart. So there's many, many stories just within our program that kind of speak to this story today.
Dr. Gupta, thank you for being with us. Your final thoughts.
Yeah, I would like to say thank you, Mary, and we are forever grateful for Tom's sacrifice and the wishes, and welcome to our transplant family.
Yes.
We are very grateful for you and Tom and other donors, and I would say thank you, Kyle, for your trust in us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Hawkinson, your final thoughts.
Yeah, I certainly advocate organ donation, and I am an organ donor, and I think this is just a great story, and of course it has turned out great, and we have a great advocate out in the community now. So just encourage and will endorse the message that we just heard before, is encourage that organ donorship, but also understanding, talk to your family and friends about it, so all of your intentions are clear.
Doc Hawk, thank you so much. Thanks to all of our guests today. And thank you for being with us. Don't forget, you can catch our updates anytime by logging onto Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Go out, make it a great Monday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow at 8. Coming up tomorrow on the Morning Medical Update. It was a dive into a pool that went horribly wrong. Dennis Evans thought he dislocated his shoulder, but doctors thought they'd have to remove his arm. I'm Jessica Lovell. He was also told he'd never throw a baseball again. How a second opinion helped save his arm and return him to the activities he loves. That's Tuesday at 8.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcast. Now, everywhere podcasts are available.